Hey guys, welcome to year 5 of my annual health and fitness test. I'm now 39 years old and jumping straight into some general health stats. I'm still maintaining my body fat around 12%, having trimmed down in the last 2 years. My fat-free mass index is holding steady. This is the amount of lean mass I have relative to my height. Finally, my waist to height ratio sees me as low risk for developing conditions like type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. If you're new to my channel, my physique generally comes from following a very clean diet and training around 9 hours a week as a 100-meter sprinter. The rest of my testing focus is nearly all on physical capabilities, many of which decline with age, and these are metrics like VO2 Max, grip strength, and total push-ups. In this video, I'll go through the tests I've taken and why they matter, my results, and the lifestyle that got me there. I'll also share some results from both my parents who've continued to track throughout this series. If you're interested in following along, please do subscribe, as I plan to do these tests for many years to come. Let's start with the first of these and look at VO2 Max. Rather excitingly, this was the first year I've ever taken a lab VO2 Max test, and the results were genuinely surprising. VO2 Max measures cardiovascular fitness, which declines around 10% per decade after the age of 30. A 2016 paper found that every 1 unit increase in VO2 max is worth a 9% reduction in all-cause mortality, and that's mainly by reducing your risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer. In previous years, I've been doing a range of estimated VO2 max tests and taking an average. This year, I did a separate video comparing over a dozen different ways to measure VO2 max, and it turns out the gold standard lab test with a mask was higher than any of those, at 62.6 milliliters per kilo per minute. However, since I'm not going to be doing a lab test every year, I'm okay taking an average of these other tests, as I have done in previous years, to gauge my performance over time. This would mean I'm still trending upwards, aged 39, and approaching excellent, which will be all the easier to reach next year, as the reference range for 40 to 49-year-olds will drop to 52 or higher. Now, in previous videos in this series, I've been guilty of reporting my result and not covering how I'm achieving these scores. It is a metric that factors in body weight, so being around 70 kilos with no real excess fat does help a lot. However, it is mainly driven by the 2 conditioning sessions I do each week as part of my sprint training. Both of these involve interval running, so 100 to 300 meters run at 75% intensity for a total of 1,500 to 2,000 meters of running. I also do circuit training, especially in winter, which might be 3 or 4 rounds of 5 minutes, doing exercises like squats, lunges, V-sits, and push-ups, for 15 to 20 reps each. For certain people, I imagine this might be a more appealing alternative to steady-state cardio, which I do not do at all. Next up is grip strength, and a 2015 narrative review found that muscular strength was independently associated with all-cause mortality, even after correcting for level of physical activity and cardiovascular fitness. A few of these studies used bench press or knee extension strength, but the majority relied on grip strength. Grip strength is often chosen in studies for its accessibility and ease of measurement, but really it's indirectly capturing upper body or even whole body strength and the ability to recruit your muscles, so don't expect to live longer just by doing loads of grip training. My results reflect how much barbell or dumbbell training I'm currently doing. In some years, my sprint training involves exercises like Romanian deadlifts, where the grip is heavily involved. Other years, it might be a barbell hip thrust, where my grip does very little. Because it's such an accessible test, conducted on a hand grip dynamometer, which you can buy for £20, it is one that I ask my parents to do every year. Here I'm using the dynamometer's reference range, which has my parents both well away from being considered weak. If you wanted a more clinical range, a study of UK Biobank data used cutoffs of 26 kilos in men and 16 kilos in women, and found hazard ratios between 1.2 and 1.8 for several types of mortality in a group of 40 to 69-year-olds. Now, a related metric I've been tracking since I turned 35 is dead hang time, how long you can hold yourself suspended from a bar. However, having spent some more time reading up on it, there's very little research on this, and I'm not sure exactly what it's capturing that grip strength isn't, other than effectively controlling for body weight, so this may be the last year that I test it. Moving on to a few gym tests relating to strength and power. While muscle mass only declines by around 0.5% per year, strength declines by 1% per year, and power by as much as 2% per year, with all these values increasing after the age of 70. Of the 3, muscular power has the strongest correlations with reductions in physical function with age. At 39, I'm still very much focused on maximizing performance in these areas, in particular my standing broad jump, where I achieved a best result of 255 centimeters, around 8'4", keeping myself in the excellent category. A lot of my sprint training is around explosive power, including repeat uphill broad jumps in winter and medicine ball throws year round, and so I'm still actively training to improve this every year. I also tested my standing vertical, which was a more modest 56 centimeters this year, 22 inches, down 2 centimeters from my peak, age 37. I've done several different jump programs, so I know I can revisit those should I wish to improve. I still remember the first few weeks of a program called VertShock, delivering a 2.5 inch or 6 centimeter gain in my standing vertical. The upper body tests, both push-ups and pull-ups, are conducted using a set tempo, which is best practice laid out by Dr. Andy Galpin, and failure is when you're unable to keep up with the metronome. Again, I'm seeing the benefits of a lighter body weight in recent years and was able to crank out 16 pull-ups to full extension, which borders on elite, and 46 push-ups lands me just between good and excellent. Both movements feature in my workouts. I usually have circuit training that will involve several push-up variations, including regular, decline, and clap push-ups for 15 to 20 reps. Pull-ups are part of a gymnastics circuit I do in one of my training phases, which also includes handstand holds, L-sits, and dips. I am aware that it's quite a big ask for a 70-year-old to smash out some pull-ups or do a max effort vertical jump without injuring themselves. So for my parents, I settled on something called the 30-second chair test. It uses a standard chair or equivalent, which is 17 inches, and it's as many unassisted reps to full standing position and back down again in 30 seconds. You do have to sit between reps. This isn't a touch and go squat, and that's something they'll continue to track in future years. At the very start of the video, I covered some general health tests that focused on body composition, and there are some other health metrics that are less visible, but equally important. Blood pressure has been normal for me for years, though looking back on annual health tests through work, I was oblivious to my elevated systolic blood pressure in my late 20s. Around 1 in 3 UK adults has high blood pressure, often without any symptoms, and that rises to 1 in 2 for adults in the US. High blood pressure is also one of the 5 criteria for metabolic syndrome, leading to an increased risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. The other 3 markers are blood biomarkers that I feel are the most valuable for people to know, having worked at a home blood testing company for 4 years. The first of which is inflammation as measured by hs-CRP, which I think can be maintained with adequate exercise and a healthy body weight and has never been a problem for me. I've chosen LDL cholesterol as the heart health marker, and last year I shared the diet changes that brought me back into the optimal range. This year was my lowest ever result at 1.7 millimoles per litre, around 66 milligrams per deciliter, which is the top 5% of the population. Those of you with more of an understanding of this will point to the fact that apolipoprotein B has better correlations with mortality, and I do test that, but for the price when testing privately, I feel it's acceptable to measure LDL cholesterol every year as a starting point. The final one is the diabetes marker HbA1c. Again, for those who know, it's a slightly lagging measure compared to something like fasting insulin, but again, a solid starting point. It shows your average blood glucose levels in the last 90 days, and I had seen mine rise in 4 of the last 5 years, threatening to move me out of optimal. In this case, recent lifestyle changes have seen me come back to the midpoint of optimal at 32, around 5% in US units. The main change has actually been walking my daughters to school. In particular, the 20-minute round trip after breakfast is likely having a beneficial impact on my blood glucose levels compared to the usual car journey. The last category is cognitive ability, and it's an area I've struggled to measure. Beyond screening tests for dementia, there's very little that can capture age-related decline, and I settled on a website I've used previously called Quantified Mind. Their IQ version 3 battery consists of 11 tests, which I realize can be divided into 7 components, some of which may have clearer declines with age. While it's still early in this project, motor speed stands out as something that has consistently declined year on year. That takes the form of a 10-second tap test, pressing the spacebar as many times as possible in a 10-second window and taking the average across 4 attempts. While it's gone from my highest score to my lowest in 4 years, there's still only a few data points, so it's a trend worth keeping an eye on over the next few years. If you've made it this far, I hope you found this video worthwhile, and I'd love to hear feedback in the comments section below. It's been hard to define exactly what I'm trying to achieve here, but I read a research paper that seems to come very close. It defines the concept of Peakspan, the years spent within 10% of your physical peak. I think it's fair to say my long-term goal with this series is to stay near my physical peak in as many areas of my health and fitness for as long as possible. What this graph makes clear is that, with the exception of crystallized intelligence, most of our systems are declining by the age of 35, if not sooner, and by age 50, they are all below the somewhat arbitrary threshold of 90%. If that resonates with you, I have a few resources that you will hopefully enjoy. Alongside these annual testing videos, I've been building out a playlist of tutorials that demonstrate how to complete any of these tests yourself. I've also put together a spreadsheet linked in the description below that contains links to all the tests and a results table, which you can make a copy of to edit for yourself. At the time of recording, I still have a few more of those to publish, and then the next playlist will be the more ambitious one. I want to do a real deep dive into how to improve each of these markers in order to reach your physical and mental peak and remain there for as long as possible. Thanks for watching.